that away from me. Recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. A lot of sobriety in this room, so the fire extinguishers are located to the left and right. The exits are over to the side. There's tons of sobriety in here. Holy smokes, a couple of people that were paying attention to you. Anyways, in Vancouver, we kind of, at the group I belong to, we go, anybody new in their first 5 years, right? And that's kind of like, it takes you that long just to kind of figure out what's going on. I'd like to welcome anybody new or coming back. I understand this is the 33rd anniversary of the Osoyoos Roundup. That's awesome. Thanks for inviting me, John, and talking everybody else into it. No. Right? A couple people said, I heard you a couple years ago and you're back tonight, so you weren't listening the first night, obviously, right? So it's pretty awesome. This is pretty spectacular. Like, there's a difference between coming here and staying here, right? We're looking at how many of us got, just in this corner here, there's over 200 years, 300 years of sobriety. A couple of us were standing over by the fire detector and it started beeping, but I think that was Bob more than anything, right? So, I don't know what that was. But there's longevity here, right? There's a magic here in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and a lot of people miss that. Right, and my dad was sober for a long time. I met my dad when I was 16, and yeah, he was sober. And he'd come to meetings, and he would participate at some level, but he was in the home, he was miserable. Like the home life and his own personal life, he kind of missed what this whole thing was about. And I think a lot of people sometimes mistaken sobriety is like doing time. Like a lot of people look at this as doing time. Let your sentence begin. Here's your 30-day chip, no parole. All right? It's kind of like, and then when you get that mindset, it's like, and AA, the fellowship goes through a lot of different phases. I was thinking, when we used to hang out and talk together, me and John can't be left unsupervised. We come up with the craziest ideas, so we got to run it through our spouses now. But it was really good to see you, John. It's really see you back on your feet and getting involved. When you kind of look at stuff like that, over 30 years of sobriety, and he just finished a major surgery, and here he is setting up, being a part of a committee and all that other stuff. And then his life represents that, right? He has something happening inside that you can't really kind of deny, that there's a gift that happens here, right? Not everybody experiences that, right? When you kind of go back into the history, when Ebby kind of got introduced to this course of action without him realizing what he was getting into, and two people went to the judge and asked the judge to suspend his sentence, and he kind of got 12-step what we understood today. We understand today. Somebody carried a message to him. He implemented it in his life, and there was a profound change in his life. Like the guy became on fire. You couldn't stop him if you tried. And so there seems to be a symptom that happens with people that get this profound change. They call it spiritual experience or psychic change, the awakening. Right? Until then, we walk around with a dull kind of light, right? But when you kind of look at that, he got 12-step. He went through a course of action that probably didn't make any sense to him back in that day. And then he got on a plane to go help Bill, who was dying of alcoholism. Right? And Bill's sitting at the table and the phone rings, and it's his friend. And what's really cool there is Bill didn't call Ebby, who we now know as Ebby, right? Ebby called Bill, who knew he was suffering from alcoholism. And he got on a plane. Most of us don't get out off the couch when it's hockey night. You know what I mean? I got other things to do. But this guy got on a plane, and what was really cool is when Bill opened the door, he noticed there was something different about him. Ebby didn't have to tell Bill there was something different about him. He knew there was something different about him. A lot of us, including me, when I first tried to get sober, I got introduced to the fellowship when I was 16, probably 1978. And I try to mimic sobriety, but what Ebby was experiencing and what I was experiencing was two different things. Like when I came to AA, my sentence started. When Ebby and Bill got this thing going, and then Bob, their life was just starting. It was two different experiences altogether. When he opened the door and he looked at Ebby, he said, there's something different about him. Right? My experience was this: is I would walk around trying to convince everybody how much I changed. And nobody like that in here, right? I go convince people how much I've changed. I'm sober now. I got 30 days. Where's my reward? Like, where's my prize? And it's a big event that I'm sober and paying my rent, my bills, and I'm not getting locked up, right? I won an Academy Award for that kind of stuff. I don't know if anybody here is like that in here. That's that self-centeredness, right? And so when I came to the fellowship of AA and they said I was the most important person here, that thought didn't leave me for a long time. It took years. It took a dramatic change for that to happen. So, the phases that happened in the fellowship of AA over the years, I'm going to keep my eye on the time here, is that when I first got introduced to this thing, it was kind of just about not drinking, keeping the plug in the jug, being your own solution, and really exerting yourself. And I tried to do that. But the problem was when I get sober, my problem started. Alcohol was my solution. And when I got away from that, I started having an acute awareness of me. And I started exhibiting a lot of mental health issues when I tried to get sober. Every symptom there is, like Tourette's, mental health, schizophrenia. I did a lot of talking to myself. I don't know if anybody was like, before cell phones, you see everybody, you look over in the car, and you see they're talking. That was me, 30, 40 years ago before I got it. I was talking to myself all the time. Sometimes I would be alone in another room, sober, talking about life, and the noise would get so loud that it would be an outside conversation. Probably anybody have the gift of that? And I'm talking, people go, "You okay in there?" And I said, "Mind your own business. It's a private conversation," right? I'd be arguing with myself, and then I'd end up loaded again, right? And then I'd stay out for a little while, and life would happen. I'd end up with all these consequences, right? And there's the new thing that's happening now. So get back to when it was self-sufficiency. That's what I tried to get sober with. And it never seemed to work. And finding God, like self-sufficiency and finding God, that lead one thing to another. So it was my idea how I was going to find God, so I'd pursue that road. And I never ended up getting sober because I never understood alcoholism. And so when I got sober, the demons of yesterday would come to rest. I think that guy who made Christmas Past, that Ebenezer Scrooge, whatever his name is, where the three guys come Christmas Past, I'd get about 15 of those guys showing up in my house, in my head. All the memories from the past and all that other stuff, and everybody act like they're doing okay in AA. So I'd come to meetings just crazy, trying to act like I was okay. I was surrendering, I was letting go, turning it over, acceptance, and then I'd be back in the bar again. And then the consequences would get my attention again, and then I'd be back in the bar again. And so I couldn't understand why I couldn't keep sober based on my desire. And then now the new thing is, you hear everybody, the gift of desperation. I'm so happy I was given the gift of desperation. If anybody ends up in AA, they have the gift of desperation. We don't make that conscious decision. Well, it's a nice night tonight. I think I'll go hang out in AA, right? It's pretty serious when you make that last stand with the people around you. Okay, I'll go to a meeting, and you kind of try to get those words back because there's nothing left to do. There's no place left to go. There's no stories left. It's kind of like the only place left for me to go is this probably place is Alcoholics Anonymous. And by the time I became aware I had a problem, everybody before me already knew I had a problem. Like I was the last one to really realize I had a problem with alcohol. Everybody around me was acutely aware of it, but I wasn't aware of it. And it's the same like the promises. When these promises started coming true, everybody around me was acutely aware of it, and I wasn't so aware of it. Right? Like it's kind of one of those things. It's kind of like as my life changed, so did everybody else's life around me changed. But previous to getting into the actual deal that we heard about and how it works, nothing changed. What I was in was always abstinence, right? And so, and how do you deal with the past? How do you deal with those demons and all the pain and agony and the wreckage of the past and get sober without a solution that's tangible, that you could actually apply to your life, that creates a sense of ease and comfort, that you're comfortable in your own skin? Because I thought just abstinence would start doing that. And plus I never understood alcoholism because the people I tried to sober up with were all 12 and 12 based. They didn't really understand alcoholism either. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that they were able to stay sober doing the 12 and 12 and sitting around talking about somebody else's experience doing the steps, and that was able to keep them sober. Plus enough pain and agony and some fellowship was able to keep them sober. And I was trying to get sober on that recipe. And so, I'll make a long story short, 11 years of in and out. I spent 11 years of in and out of the fellowship thinking I was in the program, right? And I couldn't understand why I wasn't getting sober. So this really tragic episode happened in Toronto without getting into the whole thing it was sufficient enough to scare me straight. You never see that jail commercial? It scared me straight that every time somebody would ask me if I wanted to drink, I'd think about that episode, and there's no way I wanted to drink again. There's no way I was ever going to drink again. So I stayed abstinent from alcohol for like 16 months. And if you were to ask me, are you ever going to drink again? It would be no, based on how I was thinking, how I was feeling, and the great life I was starting to recreate and all that other. My life got better by not drinking. I got promoted at work. Everything was fine. Then it was April 8th, 1986. Somebody asked me, I was sitting there, it was my birthday, and the waitress asked me if I wanted something in my coffee, and I remember what happened. 16 months or 18 months prior to that, I'm not too sure the timeline, but it was around that time. And I was alarmed and kind of repulsed at the idea of drinking. Then something switched in my mind where I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea. I know myself so much better now. I'm in touch with my feelings and character defects because I've been working on them in this 12 and 12 for a year. That's all about is getting in touch with yourself. And I really knew myself and getting to know you. I think there's a song like that, right? But I interpret that as getting to know me, never mind getting to know you, because I'm really fixated on fixing me. So I'm fixated on fixing the problem, which is me. So I spend all day thinking about me. What do you think about me? Like, that's a lot of noise and time spent on me, which is the problem. I don't know if anybody has that kind of brain here, but it's really exhausting thinking about yourself all day and how you're going to fix a problem that you created, right? How am I going to unthink of a problem or uncreate problems that I'm creating on a constant basis with people, places, things? So this lady put the whatever it was in my coffee, which I understand now is the insanity that precedes the first drink, that I'm without defense against, that makes people powerless over alcohol, who are alcoholics of this type that they describe in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I did not know that. And the second thing that happened when taking that drink, I triggered the allergy, the phenomenon of craving that only these allergic types or alcoholics have. Non-alcoholics don't have that, right? So that set in motion a whole bunch of trains of circumstances that I do not have time to get into tonight. But it was horrific enough that near the end there, I was talking about gifts of desperation. And what that translates is God moments. Gifts of desperation is God. And I've had many moments of gifts of desperation through my whole life. I mean, this one time I'm on bail. We'll back up. I was 15. And I was standing on a balcony, 18th floor of a balcony, and I was looking over, and I was probably on a 3-day or 2-day bender. I was pretty loaded, and I was thinking about jumping and killing myself. And then I started talking to God, and something shifted where I didn't do that. 4 months or 3 months later, this guy calls me saying he's my dad. He found me, says he's my dad, and he says he's a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, that he'd like to get together with my mom and me to make amends. When I told my mom that this guy says he's my dad, that we've been in isolation from because we're living under an alias, that he found me, and I said, hey, this guy found me, he says he's a member of AA, and he'd like to make amends. I don't understand what any of that means. And he says he's sober. My mom's reaction to that is, we're moving. We're just moving because of the story that he had. When we met him, my mom was totally amazed that he wasn't the same person that he was when she knew him. And I started a relationship with my father, who introduced me to the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. 6 months prior to that, I was a wreck. When Bill met Ebby, he was in the hospital for the second time seeking treatment for alcoholism. And he talked about in that story what he wouldn't do to change his life, given the opportunity, what he wouldn't do to make amends. Shortly after that, Ebby showed up. Kind of weird, eh? Kind of those desperate moments as I cry out to something and the universe says, I hear you, I'm sending somebody. And we call that, in the I am responsible card, we call that when anyone, anywhere reaches out, I want the hand of AA to be there. We're agents of something greater than ourselves. Each one of us are here because something happened and something connected us with the possibility of a different life that has us sitting here on a Friday night. It was just pretty wild, considering where you may have been sitting or situations that were happening, wishing for a different life, and yet here we are. And how many people is sitting in different locations tonight, getting to that place of desperation. So I've had many moments of that desperation just like Bill, but that in itself is not enough to create a change sufficient enough to bring about permanent, contented sobriety. So getting back to this story, I'm on bail, and I'm driving through a spot check. I'm coming off the Gardner Expressway, and I'm loaded. Like, I am loaded. I got a 26er between my legs. I don't know where I'm coming from. I'm going somewhere. I guess, I don't know if I'm on a 2-day drunk or 3-day drunk. I'm smoking non-filtered cigarettes that help motivate you. So I got dry goods under the seats that, I started like a little 7-Eleven thing to help my little enterprise. And I'm on bail. I got something in the trunk that doesn't have serial numbers on it. So anyways, if you want what I have. so I come off of this Gardner Expressway, and I'm feeling really good. Life's fantastic in my eyes. Oh, I'm on bail, and I can't get sober, and my life's a total disaster. But I'm in the moment, right? I'm living in the moment. That's what it's all about, being where your feet are. So I'm living the moment. Oh, and back up. On the back of, if you were to go to the back of my car, it says, easy does it, live and let live. And but for the grace of God. And the glow stickers, right? So I come off the Gardner Expressway, and I'm good, right? I'm good. That's how life is, right? You can be living a certain way for a certain period of time and you're good. Then something happens that snaps you into the reality of your existence, and you get a full snapshot of your life, and you go, wow, I ain't good. Like 10 minutes before that snapshot, you're fantastic. And then you get, they call it moments of clarity. And that's when your conscious talks to you. So I come off the Gardner Expressway. I can't even unroll the window. I see these guys and their spots checked. I put the non-authorized cigarette in the ashtray, put both hands on the wheel, and I start my negotiation. God. I found God. Before here and even to the back of the room, we're in serious negotiation. Anybody ever do serious negotiation here? I got cut my hair, get a suit, back to church, never drink again, burn everything that's in the car before I even got there. Like, it was strict, and I meant it. Like, I mean, I had a come to Jesus moment. It was good. I felt it. I felt the change. It was like me and God were close again. They waved me through the spot check. I picked up the non-authorized cigarette, and I said, that was close. That's how we function. And then you come here and we say, oh no, pick your own understanding of everything. Okay. Like, you do realize my understanding of everything is what got me here, and now you want me to rely on me to pick what I think is best for me to get me out of this thing? And you're wondering why it's not working. Anybody like that here? Like, I don't know why we authorize new people to start thinking, hey, choose your own conception. Well, see ya. Like, we don't think right. I don't know, maybe it's just me, right? But like I think of things that people go, what? Like, anybody ever talk to a normal person here about things you do? They go, oh God, look at the time, I gotta go. My wife's a normie. I brought her to these events. She'll be standing there with me, and a lady someone walk up and says, oh yeah, so there's that guy I nearly stabbed, and the time I end up in the trunk. She's like, what? She's horrified of the things that you people say to her nonchalantly. She's going, oh my God. She grabs my arm, and she's better now, right? Like, after 13 years of being with me, she's kind of relaxed about the whole thing after hearing my story. But when we talk to each other, it's kind of like laugh. There's identification. It's funny. There's something that happens here, right? And so I took that drink, and I ended up trying to get sober, and I had a sergeant visit me in Toronto, and I'm trying to get sober now, and I can't get sober. And I'm part of the Queensway group, and I lasted, I was a part of that group for 5 years, and my sobriety date was in pencil. I said, sure. They go, anybody coming back? They just look at me, I go, hey! And then one guy says, he's not even here yet, he's just visiting. I'm still drunk. I've come to in meetings with cases of beer, my dog, because it was in between, my place was in between the beer store and the Wednesday night meeting. I don't know why I'd go to that Wednesday night meeting. I should have went to the other. Anyways, long story. So I was in dry date, and people would talk to me, just don't do it, or you just don't want it. I said, well, I've been coming here 5 years. What do you mean I don't want it? Right? They gave me a dirty cake. I was smoking a quarter of non-authorized cigarettes a day to keep my brain functioning. Because when I stopped, I showed up, and it was loud. It was crazy. I'd get such anxiety that I'd start dry heaving all the time. And the anticipation of impending doom and calamity, it was like a riot going on in my head. And it was all going to be, I was on high alert all the time. All the time. And it just never shut up. I'd pass out from exhaustion from trying to sleep. Like, I'd just be kind of like, and then I'd come to meetings. Hi, I'm happy, joyous, and free. I'm going to kill you. Like nuts. Like like a whole hour meeting where I'd catch maybe one or two things. And then I'd try to figure out how to get sober off all this stuff. People say, listen to how it works. Go to the 12 and 12 meeting. Surrender. And I'm like trying to figure out how to do this. And I'm doing the best I can with my thinking. And my experience was I wasn't able to obtain what these certain people were talking about. And I'd mimic it and I'd get loaded again. So, I had the sergeant visit me. And he thought maybe it would be a good idea if I relocated from the area I was living in. Oh, by the way, I was living in Toronto. So he said, not everybody makes it to the station, right? And I'm not going to get into my whole lifestyle and all that other stuff, but things happen. So I got to a place again where everything is gone. I'm sitting in this apartment. I'm sitting on milk crates. I'm talking to the stereo because it's playing the music I like. And so what happens is, like, I'm certifiably nuts now. I'm in between hysterics and hallucinations. I'm talking to myself and I'm explaining what paintings are saying. I'm vomiting green bile. When I get in the shower, the phone's ringing all the time. I don't know if anybody has that problem. And you shut off everything and you're listening and there's nothing happening. There's a ringing happening all the time. There's people calling me when I'm walking over bridges by myself. Hey, Tony. And I'd be looking for this person who's calling me. There's nobody calling. Like, I can't find nobody. So, and now I'm sitting there trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life and how to do it. So I had this big event that was going to be a life-changing event coming up. And it was a serious relocation into a gated community that was going to keep me there for quite a while. It was more like on a retirement plan by the looks of it. So I was not thrilled on the idea of where they were going to be reallocating me for a duration of time. And so I was sitting there, and I had a gift of desperation again. And what that was, I had nowhere else to turn, and I turned to God. And I was sitting there, and I go, God, there's got to be something. There's got to be, you got to help me here. I can't believe where I am. I can't see no way out. There's no way out of this. I'm beyond anything. Like, I'm hooked. I'm finished. And I need your help. And I don't know if it was that because I'm not quite right? I'm like, time and all that stuff really escapes me in my story because it was just a really convoluted time, right? So what happens is the phone rang, and this time it actually rang, and it was my brother that I haven't heard from in 2 years. And he says, hey, what's going on? I said, oh, everything's good. Sitting on a milk crate, leaving little square ass pegs in my eye. You ever sit on those milk crates? You know, it leaves like a checker print all over your body from sitting on it. Anyways, I was down to that for furniture. So I said, hey, things are good. Then I started telling him what was happening in my life. And he says, why don't you come out here and start a new life? And I said, where's here? He says, BC, Vancouver. I said, I'll be there in a day or so. So I didn't know it was like a 4-day drive. And when you're detoxing, it's actually more like a week. I don't know if anybody's ever tried to do a long relocation. My brain never thought about detoxing because I was always loaded. I don't know if you never think, oh, I'm going to have detoxes. I'm going to go into the heebie-jeebies. There'll be spiders crawling on me and I'll be going like 120 down the highway and there'll be things moving that are not there. Like, I think they call it trails and stuff like that. So I was on the way out here and I got so sick I pulled off to the side of the highway And I remember, I was we set up a tent, me and the person I was with, and we were in there, and I started like almost having convulsions, and it started raining. I never seen rain like this in my entire life, and being a smart guy from Toronto, I put my tent in a little ravine where a river starts happening. So, that movie, A River Runs Through It, I invented that, right? So I'm lying on the sleeping bag and I'm begging to God and I'm dying. And the river started running through my tent and I was so sick I couldn't even move. And I remember talking to God and that was it. And so I came out here and that was in 87, August 87, because I had that reallocating of where I was going to spend where they're going to relocate my time was August 31st. And so I left. And I took care of a couple of resentments that I still had to get even with a couple of people, make amends with. So I took care of a lot of these different people, these things. And I left. They helped me finance my trip without them knowing it. That's another story. Anyways, so I came out here with the idea I'm starting a whole new life. There's nothing about me that I like anymore. I'm spitting at my own image in the mirror. Like I am totally disgusted with myself. My life has gotten to a point where I'm very dangerously antisocial. And I can't control my emotional nature, sober or drinking. Drinking, at least I get enough relief that I'm calm. Sober, I start becoming like a rough, I'm trying to say it in a real general way, a real one night. I'm sitting there trying to get sober and I'm getting crazy. And I move to the small town where my dad was living, trying to get sober with his group and all that other stuff. And I'm in the church and I'm getting nuts. I'm starting to detox again. I didn't know what detoxing was. And so I'm sitting there and I'm getting nuts. And I had a newborn with a lady that didn't like me. And that was a whole different story because she didn't like my girlfriend that just stabbed me. and it was just, normal lifestyle for us. Eh? So I'm trying to do the right thing back then, doesn't matter. You do the right thing. You marry people and all that other stuff. So I'm sitting there doing time. And my sister and her friends were all there, and they're all playing Monopoly, and I'm getting crazy and I couldn't stand anywhere. Then I just got to a place, I told them to stand up and empty their pockets, and I took all their money from them, and I locked that lady in the closet, and I went down and bought some booze, and I sat there and I drank like nothing happened. That's one night. And if you would have told me anything different, well, it wouldn't affect me. So I'm out here to start a new life. There's nothing about my life that's appealing to me. I'm really mean at this time. I'm never going back to that lifestyle. I ended up getting a couple things happened out here. So, like I said, I couldn't control my emotional, so I was driven with the idea of desperation. So I should be able to stay sober now. Like I'm surrendering, I got acceptance, I got the gift of desperation. I'm going to meetings, I'm willing to go to any lengths. And I end up out here and I'm back in 12 and 12 studies. And I'm back with people that don't really understand alcoholism because they were able to get sober based on their experience and they can't understand why I can't get sober. So what happens is I made 3 months and I ended up relapsing. So I picked up the meetings and then I made 6 months. And a long story short, April 8, 1989 is my last drink. And my birthday is April 6th. I just finished doing 360 meetings in 90 days. I'm in 4 12 and 12 studies. I stayed sober for my birthday, April 7th, 1989. It was a Thursday, I remembered. I went to that meeting and I talked about how great I was doing keeping me sober. And everybody applauded me, tapped me on the back. You're doing a great job, Tony. And I believed that I had what it took to stay sober for the rest of my life. The next day, I talked about what a great job I did keeping myself sober on Thursday. This Friday. Saturday, I got a 3-month chip. Talked about Academy Award. I'd like to thank me, and I'd like to thank me, and I'd like to thank me for what a great job. And all the promises are coming true. Look at my girlfriend, look at my job, look at my watch, look at my apartment. Look, the promises are all external. An hour later, I was drinking. And I couldn't tell you why. I was just baffled. So this guy named George, who I used to look at to make me feel better about me, we do that, right? George had psoriasis and he would shake and all. So if I ever get that bad, and the other guy who used to make me feel better was holding onto his own pants, lighting fires up and down the street. So they were the two guys I used to look at. If I ever get that bad, I'm getting close. Like I told you, I'm vomiting green bile. My system's starting to shut down. I'm cutting my own hair. I'm in trouble, but I don't know it. My waist was 32. I got one leg that size now, right? I mean, I'm not like... some of you are old enough to remember how you used to lock the door? You could unscrew the cap to lock the door, the silver things. Had it holding my glasses, cut my own hair. A vision for you, and I'm going into the meetings. Hey, hi, do you need help with the steps? This poor girl. Oh my God, we're on our second date, and I'm almost pushing this guy down the street in my car. And she's hanging onto the dash. She's kind of like screaming. I forgot she was in the car. I was having a moment with this cab driver. And she goes, she just looked. I said, oh, hey, how you doing? And she goes, I said, would you like to go for a coffee? She's just nodding. And like her hand. And I said, see, I've been restored to sanity. Before I would have pushed him off the road. Like, I just don't understand what's happening, right? My understanding. So I'm in these 12 and 12 meetings. They did a study, just to give you a mentality. Next time you tell somebody to figure something out, you got to remember your audience, right? It was step 8, and it was with all these old timers. It was 12 and 12 study, and they're all talking about all these people they owed amends to. And I'm thinking, as they're talking, I'm thinking, oh, wow, well, you got problems. And it came to me, and I said, I never did nothing to nobody that didn't have it coming to them. Alex nearly fell off the chair. They started calling me Tony Montana after that, right? That was my nickname at my home group, Tony Montana. How you doing? Oh my God, like nuts. But if you ask me, based on me asking me, things are pretty good compared to how they were. Like my second year Kate, I don't know what I'm saying. I was all scratched up from this girl, like a normie supposedly. She tried to kill me. And I had to wear a turtleneck. I got a picture, and I talked about how fantastic my life was at the meeting. That was the best relationship I ever had. She only tried to kill me every 6th day. The other one was trying to kill me on a regular basis. That's progress, isn't it? So you got to remember the audience that we're dealing with. So backing up. So George gets 12-stepped into a big book study workshop. So there's these guys. I seen them come in because now I'm running a 12 and 12 study. Because if you want what I have, and I figure I can help these guys, 11 years in and out, but I can help these guys because obviously they don't know what they're talking about. And I got 30 days again. I'm not new. I've never done this, but I'm not new, and I don't know what I'm talking about. But they don't know I don't know what I'm talking about. And to them, they sound very impressed with what I'm talking about because I've formulated a talk, right? We've formulated a talk based on stuff. I think catchphrase sobriety. You hear something really good at one meeting, you share it at the next meeting. It's like airport sobriety. That's what I call it. It's like going to the airport. You don't got a ticket, but you like all the people that are there because you got some people going places. You got some people coming back from places. You sit there, you talk to them. It's like, wow. And you say, wow, that's an amazing place. This place, Cuban. You went to this place, wow, and you're so amazed. Then you talk to somebody else. And then you go, yeah, I hear it's amazing. And then you go to your third meeting, yeah, it is amazing. And if you ever go there, go to this, you start acting like it's your experience. That's what we do. You don't have to put up your hands. But that's what we do. We're chameleons. We adapt. So this guy named Machine Gun Jerry, he was the 15th member of Alcoholics Anonymous in Vancouver. And if you looked at him, you think, right? But this guy was the real deal, right? Because I remember thinking, his story's a little far-fetched. And then a little voice in my head says, look at your story. Hey, Jerry, good to see you. So anyways, I'm doing this 12 and 12 study. They start this big book study right after ours in the Vancouver Recovery Club in the basement with the leaking pipes and all that stuff. Beautiful place. They had it was really nice, the floor, the mist smell. And it was good. Reminds me of home. So anyways, he would come in and was hatted in his flunkies. And then what happens is they 12-step George. They'd go through the fellowship looking for people who were dying of alcoholism in AA. They would 12-step you into a home group meeting. So they got George into this home group meeting, and there was a profound change in his whole life. Profound. That they told him in order to keep what he had to find people to work with, probably the sickest people that he could find. And so he couldn't find anybody, so he started fixating on me. I don't know why he fixated on me. I don't remember him asking me permission to start working with me. We don't need permission. If they're in a meeting, you can start working with them. You ask any newcomer, you need any help? No, I got this. You don't add, 12-step doesn't say, hey, walk up and ask enough people. It says just start working with them. The first sign of sponsorship is to get in their head. I sponsor a lot of people. No, you get in their head. Like, you make them start thinking. So George walked up to me after this profound change, and he goes, hey, you want to come into this big book study workshop we're doing? I said, no, it's okay, George. I know what not to do now. 11 years. I didn't understand alcoholism. Right? And plus, it's Tuesday night, and that's my trap line night. I mean, my home group night. And that's where I do my serious dating, because it says to find a power greater than yourself that could help you with your living problems. And she's really manageable. And like, I'm nuts. I'm 27, right? So I had my priority straight: job, women, money. Some of you understand what I'm saying. Don't nod. Anybody young when they got here? Or you all got here old? Yeah, you got here young. Anyways, after the booze is gone, hi, what's your name? No, sorry, maybe just me. Okay, so he realizes that I'm so sick I can't even realize what's going on, and I don't even know what's going on, but I think I know what's going on because I'm hanging around with people just like me. We're hanging around with other newcomers. Those old-timers are the ones with the problem. You ever hear like there's something wrong with those old-timers? So George says, hey, you've been around a long time, man. I said, yeah, I have. Almost proud of the idea. He says, well, when are you coming to help us out next Tuesday? I said, George, I could see you could, in my head, I could see you could need my help. I've listened to you guys, and you guys got some serious problems. Because they were talking language I didn't understand. So I showed up. I talked to my sponsor. I said, hey, these guys want me to go help with the steps. He says, who? I said, Machine Gun Jerry and George and Rick and these guys, they have a home group. They want me to help them. My sponsor says, I think that's a great idea. You should show up next Tuesday and help those guys out. So I show up next Tuesday with a 12 and 12. I had no idea what they were setting me up for. I walk into that group, and I love Al-Anon. So George's wife was in Al-Anon for a while now before George. So George has got about 3 months sober now, maybe 6. I walk in, and her eyes are big. I thought there was something the matter with her. I thought, like, she couldn't believe I was in her home, because her home group was across from our home group, and I fought a lot of guys in my home group. So when there was a commotion with chairs flying and all that other stuff, the Al-Anons would come over to see what's happening because they can't help themselves, right? They come over. Who's the problem today? No, sorry. And it would be me, right? And I'd tell the whole group where to go. I've got up at the podium and I told you all where to go because what I thought you were thinking about me. Nobody's done that here, right? So anyways. So I go in there, and her eyes are really big. They started taking me through this course of action, and without realizing they were saving my life. And the more this change started to happen in my life, the more calm Judy became. And the more grounded I became. And I understood alcoholism. I understood why I couldn't get sober for the first time. I understood why relapse is the number one guarantee in step 1. Step 1's promise is you're going to continue to drink if you're this type of alcoholic. It explained things to me. And step 2 explained that doesn't have to be my story anymore. I could have the story of Alcoholics Anonymous if I'm willing to do certain things. And these things have to be done in sequence in order to connect me with something greater than myself that will create this change sufficient enough for me to recover from alcoholism. That way I'm no longer suffering from the symptoms of step 1. I'm now suffering from life situations that I apply these principles to maintain this way of living. As long as I maintain this way of living, I don't have to worry about alcoholism returning, the insanity of the first drink returning. And when they explain that more about alcoholism, and in Bill's story, that having a desire and wanting change isn't enough. If it was enough, we would change how it works. If you can't get sober, you haven't done this work. It's that simple. So I've been in AA now over 41 years. But I've been sober as the result of the program outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous through the guidance of another human being who had the collective experience of doing that, which we'll get into tomorrow during the workshop part. And I found the magic, and the magic was within me. And as I started going through that, my whole life started to change. And where the magic really, we're talking about this before, where the magic really started to happen, and I got able to see God's fingerprints over my life, was in step 9. That's where it really started to happen. Because before I had certain ideas, I was able to mimic change, I was able to mimic, fabricate evangelical sobriety, I used to call it, like this huge upheaval in emotions and ideas that I've created, but it wasn't able to sustain life. So that means I'd get a call from an unblocked number and I'd answer it and I'd lose my shit. But I'd go to a meeting and talk about how I've been restored to sanity. Right? So I was not able to demonstrate these principles in all my affairs. I was still haunted by my ghost, but as I did my 5, I got connected to something. It was pretty wild. Like I couldn't put my finger, it just didn't make sense, but there was something new that was always there, but it was more prominent. It was more defined. It was that voice that's always been there. That's always wanted better for me. In my darkest hour, there was always something said, what are you doing, man? Like there's something different for you. And every single one of us have heard that. That part of you that you talk to, what are you doing? And you go, I don't know. You ever wonder who's asking those questions? That's the life force in you. That's what we call this power. Our more religious members call it a God consciousness. It's this thing that's in each and every one of us. It's there. And it took we agnostics going through that chapter to explain to me where this thing, this present, or whatever you want to call it, this essence of life, this power that they talk about in step 2, that's available in each and every one of us. This is God as we understand him. It's not my understanding. I have my own concept of that. I call it a frequency. But I had to understand what they were talking about. What happens in AA now, we've stopped explaining what that is. And if you don't know what it is, I would have never came up with that idea that this thing is deep down within me, and once I get access to it, it'll create a change within me that it gives me a life force or a security or a comfort that I'll learn to depend on it under in any and all conditions. I'll be able to match calamity with serenity. When all else fails, I'll be able to find that quiet place within inside of me that gives me the strength to move on. Right? In step 11, sought through prayer and meditation. Right? But to continue to this access to this power, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact. It says it's there. It's not an argument. It's not my idea. In the end, in the spiritual appendix, it says every one of us, with a few exceptions, have tapped into this inner resource of strength. Where is this thing? That's God as we understand him. We should be explaining where this access to this thing is within, because if you don't find it within, this thing is going to take you out. That's it. So I have no problem. Today I'm okay with calling it God. Frequency, creative intelligence, but it's a power. Came to believe that a power greater, that's our story. That's the story of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the miracle of AA. It's available to everybody, but you need to explain it. If you don't explain it, the only person who don't get it is the new person. If you already have it, then you need to explain it, because the way a new person hears something and the way you explain it is 2 different things. It's not, our program of recovery is not left to interpretation. Otherwise, they wouldn't put it in a manual. Step 1 would be say, well, you had enough? Oh, yeah. Step 2 would say, figure it out. Step 3 would say, didn't figure it out, eh? No, it's not. You know, like this is a pretty big manual. Why would they spend all those chapters explaining things if it was my understanding of things? Nowhere does it say it's your understanding. You can choose your own conception of what we're talking about. A couple of people just argued, right? You need, Ebby, when Bill was sitting with Ebby explained this course of action that he took that created this change. After that, he says, why don't you choose your own conception of what I'm talking about? Bill realized it was only a matter of being willing to believe, right? To do what his friend did to get what he got. Step 2 is the idea, the bare minimum question in step 2. Do you believe, or are you willing to believe that there is a power greater than yourself that could create this change? Well, how do I get this change? That's what this book is about. That's what this course of action is about. You don't have to understand it. If you're willing to do what they did, you'll get what they got. You'll suddenly realize, holy smokes, something's happened. That's pretty amazing. When you get that moment, it'll be like a eureka moment. It'll be this thing that all those that went before you, it's a part of a collective. We're getting too singular in AA now. Well, for me, well, it's not for you. It's for us. Well, it's my God as I understand him. Why do you need to specify that every time? Who cares how you understand them? Is it working? Is it the same access that you got through our course of action? Is it collective? Is it a power that's working in your life? Then that's all you need to say. Through the course of action that I did through this thing, I have what these people have. I want what they have. I did what they did. I got what they have. It's part of the collective now. If you want what we have, not what I have. We have a way out which we can absolutely agree. It's not my program. If you think it's your program, you've already deluded yourself. It's not mine. I wasn't qualified to come up with this thing. My program will get me loaded. This is the program of recovery. It's outlined in here. This is my manual that I continuously look at. So where I'm at now, it's kind of like, 30 years later, we have one of the biggest big book study workshops in Canada. We get about 110 on a Friday night. Tuesday, we're getting 80. And those branches have branched off into other meetings. They're getting 80, 50, 70 people. It's pretty remarkable the changes getting back to the basics of the fundamental of alcohol, which is the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's people getting sober who are never able to get sober. They're finding the magic in this thing. They're becoming a part of the miracle called Alcoholics Anonymous, if you want what we have. It's not for me. It's collective. I'm not the only one with this experience. I'm not the only one with this understanding. There's a whole fellowship of people just like me. Right? It's pretty remarkable stuff. And so what happened is getting back to where this became personal to me, what you people were talking about in here, was the fourth step was the start of it. I started getting relief of the bondage of self. I started finding a recipe that I could apply that took away my difficulties. I was able to outgrow fear and find the ability to move forward in my life. I started making my relationships more amendable or more tangible to be able to access this thing. And as I was doing my nines, some really remarkable things started to happen. I mean, I went back to make amends to these people I haven't seen in 16 years. And they were my family on my mom's side. So back then, if you have warrants for your arrest, you have to take a bus because you can't fly. Only a few of you would know that, right? I still didn't take care of the other thing that I had to take care of that I took care of, which is another story altogether, right? So in order to do successful nines, you need to live in 11. This whole thing is about step 11. Anybody tells you different, then they really don't understand what this is all about. And you can look at page 85. And it tells you the whole purpose of this whole course of action is to get you living in the 24-hour clock of step 11. That's what this access to this power, maintain, and development. So anyways, I'm on this bus from BC to Quebec. And every major bus depot I'm asking, they said, a couple of members said, when you go in there, ask if there's any friends of Bill W. So I go on the PA, go on the PA. Any friends of Bill W here? Nobody. So I get through Toronto and I'm going through North Bay and I'm getting on the last bus. And there's a third step promise on page 63 that leads you into step 3. Step 3 is an idea. It's not being able to achieve. It's an idea that these things could be fulfilled if I go through the rest of the course of action. Like in order to confirm step 2, you need to finish step 12. Step 12 is a confirmation of step 2. It's circular. People talk about the triangle. It's not the triangle, it's the circle. Once you have the circle, the triangle stays in place. Right? It's one of those things about the relationship as God is being expressed. But that's a whole different talk for tomorrow. So I'm on this bus. And I'm driving, and I'm talking. You ever see a new person starts moving around like that? That's me. I'm sitting in the front of the bus because you know what happens in the back of the bus back then. And I'm going nuts, eh? And this lady, and I say, God, you said you'd look after me. I don't see you holding up your end of the bargain. I said, you're really dropping the ball here. You see, and I don't know if anybody's ever talked to God that way here, right? But we're having another harsh negotiation because this time, buddy, this lady beside me goes, you okay? I said, yeah, why? She goes, well, you seem kind of restless. I said, well, yeah, I got to go see my family. I haven't seen them in 16 years. I got to do this thing called like an amends. She says, oh, yeah, I know all about that. I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous for the last 20 years. I look up, I say, funny guy, eh? Funny guy. And that's it. Unexplainable events. That's what this thing. Getting sober is an unexplainable event. They talk about this phenomena, like the illness, but so is the solution, a phenomena. Right? To give examples, the unexplainable events, how we're sitting here sober is an unexplainable event. Your dry date is an unexplainable event. So if those things could happen, it could create a psychic change. Sufficient enough to rearrange your whole life to save you from the fate that you were living before you got here, to remove alcoholism from the scenario so you're now governed by a different story, then what else is left? Yeah, that lady was sitting there. God said he would look after me. We're his agents. We don't know why these things happen. When something tells you go here and you argue, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go to a home group. I don't want to go half an hour before the meeting. I want somebody else to set up. I've done my time. I got 3 months again. So I don't want to stay after the meeting to see if somebody needs a time, but I got things to do. Somebody else could set up the meeting. Well, who set up the meeting for you when you got here? Was the coffee made when you came to Alcoholics Anonymous? Were the chairs up? Was there somebody to greet you half an hour beforehand? Where would you be if these people weren't here for you? Your job is to be there for other people because, FYI, you are Alcoholics Anonymous now. We're Alcoholics Anonymous. What it looks like for the future is us. How we carry this message is us. If you want to stop doing this and take the chance to see how long you could make it before you become so miserable not even you can stand you. Some of you are there now, but I'm not pointing at anybody. So, sorry, John told me to say that. But there's something really remarkable here. That when we got this gift, and the thing that happens here, and we watch other people, like tonight, there's Katie. She's 2.5 years sober. She just flew to Fort St. John. She's speaking at a roundup there. She'll be carrying this message. Joe will be sitting right now, starting the Big Book Study Workshop, or just finishing it in Vancouver. He has 18 months. He'll be directing people how to get through this meeting. He showed up at that meeting with probably half a dozen people at 6 o'clock. For those who are new coming through, who need help with guidance through this thing, to help them navigate them through the book so they can have their own experience that allow them to recover, to connect to something greater than themselves. What that does is enhance your sobriety. If you're not getting the magic from this, the juice is one person working with another. We become channels of something unbelievable. I'm 30 years sober, and I get more juiced about this now. Got John, Amber. Like when you look at all the people who are involved, you look at their life. Why are they so happy all the time? Because they're showing up meetings half an hour beforehand. Didn't that guy just have a major surgery? What is he doing running the meeting? Because he's grateful. And I'll close with this idea. A lot of people talk about being grateful. If you're doing nothing, you're not grateful. You're thankful. Grateful is you get involved. Grateful is the idea that I remember what these people did for me and the self-sacrifice they did for me. My job is to be there for somebody else. Grateful is my mom used to say, Mom, that was a great meal. Thank you. She says, oh, you're just thankful, are you? I said, no, I'm really grateful. She says, then help with the dishes. Get up off your ass and help with the dishes. Gratitude is an action. Being thankful is a verb. A lot of people are really thankful in AA now. Everybody's having their own personal experience. Whose job is it to carry this message anyways? It's our job. How long you want to stay here? How long you want to be happy? We put on the coffee because there's people working on membership as we speak. And what we do is we get people ready. We don't lose nothing. Think about it. What they did is our family, friends, employers, the community has lost us to alcoholism, a deadly disease. And when they show up here and they hear that their son, daughter, father, mother, grandmother come to AA, they're hoping that their prayers will be answered. They're hoping that when they come back, they won't be the same person that came here. Whose job is that to carry this message? It's our job, those who have experienced it. If you haven't experienced it, you can't carry something that you don't have. It's not a message, it's this message. What's this message? That we don't have to die of alcoholism. That they put together a manual called the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is our program. This is our fellowship. If you want what we have, this is what we do. If you can't show people how to do this, then you've never done it. Then direct them to somebody that has. Nothing wrong with being their friend, but if you're sponsoring somebody and you're not taking them through this, you're not sponsoring anybody. You're probably killing them. But I'm going to make some friends if I continue to talk, so I'll end with that. Thanks for having me. You guys are awesome. Love you lots.